Hello there, this is Mr. Frazier, and I'm going to go through this test real quick and do the test corrections. Hopefully everybody is got a piece of paper and a pencil. Remember, there were two forms. There was a Form A and a Form B, and you're going to have to find the matching question on Form B. All I do is go through the questions on Form A. Your job is to find the correct questions on Form B. All right, so we start with the first problem. It says Sally makes candles using different scents. She sells the candles for $8 on her website, which means she makes $8 per candle. And they even give you the equation. It asks you to determine how much money she earns in candle sales. And it says, what is the independent variable? Well, we know that she makes $8 for each candle. So the independent would be the number of candles she sells. Okay? So understanding that you would circle each and you know the word after it would be candle. Okay? Write this equation in y-intercept form. When they say write it in y-intercept form, they're saying get the y by itself. So that means you would move the 4x first, which means it would be negative 3y equals negative 4x minus 18, because you have to change the 4x from one side to the other. And then I'm going to divide the entire problem by negative 3. So that means y equals 4/3 x plus 6. Okay? And then they want to know what the y-intercept is. So that would be this number. Now, is there another way you could do it? Of course there is. You could also stick a 0 in for the x value and find the y-intercept. So that means I'd put a 0 in for x, and I'd have negative 3y equals negative 18, and I'd have y equals 6. Either way is acceptable, okay? But this is the y value, which means you then have to know that the x value was 0. So the answer would be 0, 6. All right, problem number 3. It says movie tickets cost $8.75. An adult movie ticket costs $10.25. Okay, so that means we would have the F, and depending on which we put first, so if I went student to adult equals, and then it would be $8.75 S plus, correct, $10.25 A. Okay, student and adult, student and adult, student and adult. Problem 4. Show which shows the equation in slope-intercept form. And hopefully you see they want you to get what letter by itself? It would be M. So now I'm going to move the N. So it would be 12M equals negative 4N plus 480. Okay. And then I would divide this entire problem by what? Correct? 12. And I get M equals negative 1/3 N plus 40. Now, one of the reasons I would get this scientific calculator, the TI-30XS, is because you can then do your fraction work on it. So, for example, it would have been negative 4 divided by 12, which would have been what you put in your calculator, and it would have given you that as a decimal, and then you hit this key, and it would change it to a fraction for you, and that's where I get the negative 1/3. So they are going to let you use a scientific calculator, a scientific calculator on the test. They've told us this. My suggestion would buy this one because you could use this for both algebra and geometry, and it does the fractions for you. It even simplifies it because it was supposed to be negative 4/12. If you wanted to, you could even put it in as a fraction. That's the fraction key right there. You'd hit it, and it would be negative 4/12, and it will reduce the fraction for you and give you negative 1/3. All right. Next one, problem number 5. It says the equation D equals RT. They want you to solve for T, correct? Okay, so they want you to solve for T. because they want you to solve for time. So that means you get the t by itself, so you'd have d equals RT. That means I have to divide by, correct, R. So it would be d over R equals t. Problem 6. Now, a lot of this work is what I should have seen on your paper on your answer sheet, and many of you didn't write anything on your answer sheet, or I should have seen this work on a separate sheet of paper, and some of you didn't do that as well. I do apologize. I hope you do a better job of writing out your work. All right, this one says the company's function for predicting how much money they make is 5x plus 15,000. Okay, so we have the R of x equals 5x plus 15,000. But then they said the cost to make the car is 2x minus 2,000. Okay? And then they want to know how to find profit. Hopefully you know that the amount of money you make minus the cost gives you the profit. Whatever it costs you, if you minus it from here, you'll get your profit. The problem is when you minus it, that means you minus everything. So this first 2 becomes negative, so it's 5x minus 2x, which is 3x. But this becomes 15,000 minus a negative 2,000. Minusing a negative is adding, so 15,000 plus 2,000 becomes 17,000. This was the only one that was kind of tricky. We had talked about it briefly in class. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I did end up giving everybody a bonus, an extra credit point. I gave everybody a point to compensate for this, so no harm, no foul. If you got it right, you got bonus. If you didn't get it right, it shouldn't have affected your grade. You actually got a point higher than you probably should have. All right, so for this next one, it says rewrite C of x using the distributive property. And hopefully you know that means that would be 9x plus 27. Okay. The next one is what is the x-intercept of this equation? And x-intercept means you put a 0 in for what number? Put a 0 in for y. So it would be 0 equals 1/2 x plus 6. And then now you're solving for the x-intercept. Okay, so that means I move the 6 over. So it's negative 6 equals 1/2 x. Multiply the whole problem by what to get rid of the fraction? Hopefully you know I multiply the whole problem by 2. And I get x equals negative 12. All right, number 9. Number 9 says at the high school function, it costs $5 for a student ticket and $10 for an adult. So that would be $5 for a student ticket and $10 for an adult ticket. And they want the sales to be $1,430. Okay. So you have to write out the equation. They didn't give it to you. And then you have to find the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So that means I put a 0. If 0 students went, 0 students, how many adult tickets did I sell? And I can do this in my head, but if I put a 0 in for the students, that means the $10 per adult ticket would equal the $1,430, which means I divide both sides by 10, and I would get the number of adults were 143 adults. So when I look at these graphs, the number of adults when I sold no student tickets would be 143. Well, by looking at these graphs, that only happens here, possibly. Does not happen here. This would not be 143. This doesn't happen. This would not be 143. The only possibilities would be either A or D, because that's where 143 tickets would be for adults if I sold no students. Now I can reverse that. If I sold no adult tickets, how many student tickets would I have sold? Well, now I would take that and divide it by 5. Now I know that that number is going to be 286 student tickets. Now one of the reasons I know it's 286 is because I have to sell 2 student tickets to equal 1 adult. So if I know an adult ticket was 143 people, if I didn't sell any students, then the reverse would happen, 286. So I need one that's 286. Hopefully you get that this one is not 286. It's between 100 and 200. This one's between 200 and 300. So my answer is A. Why? Because I did the y-intercept and the x-intercept. The adult tickets with no students and the student tickets without selling any to adults. Most people did not do any of the work. They just look at a graph and picked one. All right, number 10. It says there's a prescription and it costs $15 with one kind of insurance and $75 with another kind of insurance. So hopefully you know that would be 15x plus 75y equals, and then it earned $5,850. And then they tell you which one they had prescriptions for. The Med Plus. The Med Plus is $15. So that means they were supposed to put in 15 and 220. And this is the same thing you did on the software. Same thing we've done in class. You plug in a number for it. You solve for y now. So 15 times 220 is 3,300 plus 75y. Okay, so I subtract 3,300 from both sides. And I'm left with 2,500. Right? Let's try this again. Okay, we'll try this again. 3,300 minus 250. Okay. 5,850 minus 3,300. Correct? Okay. And then it's 75y equals that, so you got to divide both sides by 75. You get y equals 34. All right. Halfway through it. Now, hopefully you get that you are supposed to do test corrections for this, which means you write out the original question, you have to show all the math work, get the right answer, then you have to tell me what you did wrong originally, or what you were supposed to do to get it right originally. Please don't tell me I picked the wrong number, or I picked the wrong letter. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about what you did mathematically that you didn't do the first time. Okay. This one was a little bit more difficult because they wanted you to get the radius by itself. And we talked about how to do this. You would divide by pi. Okay, so you have a divided by pi equals r squared. And then we talked about what the opposite of squaring something is. Hopefully you know the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So if I square root and square root, I now have a square root of pi equals r. Because the opposite of squaring is square rooting, and hopefully you see which problem that is. Problem 12. It says write this in standard form, which means you have to have the x and y on the same side, and you can't have fractions. Notice, it can't be this one because x and y aren't on the same side. It can't be this one because x and y aren't on the same side. So you're narrowed down to either this problem or this problem because x and y have to be on the same side. So when I move this over, it becomes 1/2 x plus y equals -7. Why? Because I move the -1/2 x over, it becomes +1/2 x. What do I have to do to get rid of the fraction? I have to multiply this whole problem by 2. Okay, when I multiply the whole problem by 2, I get x plus 2y equals -14. Problem 13. This is another one identifying the dependent this time and not the independent. Steve bought wrenches of different sizes. He spent $30 each wrench. This is my independent. The wrenches are my independent and how much the wrenches cost would be my dependent. Okay. The size of the wrenches have nothing to do with it. The number of wrenches bought is my independent because I circle it and the word after it is the independent. So the wrenches are independent. Number of wrenches. Okay, next one says put in slope-intercept form, which means I need to get the y by itself. If you look at your answers, you need the y by itself. So that means I got to move the x. So it's negative 8y equals, and I move that x over. It's 2x, and it becomes negative 2x. Anytime I cross the equal sign with a number, when I move it, not when I divide it, but when I actually just take the whole number and move it over, it has to switch signs. So it's positive 2x, over here it's negative 2x. Minus 16. Now I'm going to divide the whole problem by negative 8, right? Because I need to get the y by itself. So when I divide the whole problem by negative 8, and again, the advantage of this calculator would be negative 2 divided by negative 8 is 0.25, and then I hit the little key, and it gives me 1/4. That's the magic key right there, that forwards and backwards. It does it both. There you go. All right. So now that's 1/4 x. And then negative 16 divided by negative 8 is a positive 2. Alrighty. Number 15. Which is a linear function? This one's visual. This one is called quadratic. This one is called exponential. This one is called absolute value. There's only one left. The first one is linear. Which graph does not represent a function? Well, this is a function because it passes the vertical line test. This is a function. It passes the vertical line test. Turn the page. This is a function. It passes the vertical line test. This one does not pass the vertical line test. This one is not a function. Why? Because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. Number 17. Which one is exponential? Exponential means I have an x in the exponent. So which problem has an x in the exponent? Hopefully you see it's only one that has x as an exponent. Problem 18. Problem 18 asks you to find the slope. This is our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. First difference problems. 1 minus 7. And then 10 minus 1. Okay? And you get, if you use your lovely calculator, you will get negative 6 over 9. And then, of course, again, you can use your calculator because this is the cool one. Negative 6 over 9. And it will reduce it all for you. Look at that. Negative 2/3. It's magic. Problem number 19. Name the slope and the y-intercept. This one should have been the easiest question on the test because it's in slope-intercept form, which means the first number I run across is the slope. The second number I run across is the y-intercept. So the first number is negative 10. The second number is negative 3. Okay, problem 20. Problem 20 is write the problem in standard form. And I told you not to worry about the decimals. So one of them is going to be x, one of them is going to be y, and you're writing an equation. So hopefully you know the customer could buy 145. So that means it's $145 worth of paint. They paid $28.25 for one and $6.25 for the other. And it would equal 195. Or excuse me, 145. Now they tell you to use P for gallons and R for rollers. So this would be P and R. I used X and Y originally. But yes, P is for gallons of paint R is for rollers. All right? All right. Then we get to the 21. 21 says this is a scatter plot, and you're supposed to make a prediction of how many mistakes do you expect a student to make at the recital after 13 hours. Okay, so 13 hours is here, so I would go up, and I would expect them to make, hopefully, less than 40 mistakes, because these are in intervals of 10. So that means if this was 40, it would be about 38 mistakes. It's definitely not 49, that would be up here. It's definitely not 28, because that would be way down here. Remember, this is an approximation. This is called a line of best fit. Same thing goes here. It says the scatter plot below shows the tree height over time. What is the approximate height after 10 years? So here's 10 years. I go all the way up. It's right there. So this would be 15 years. And then they go by, it looks like 2 years, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, their intervals are in ones. So if this was 15 years, then it would be 17 years. Why? Because you have 15, 16, 17. Hopefully you know it's not 13, because it's not below 15, and it's not above 20. So your only choice was 17. Because it can't be 20 or 21. Those are above, and it's not below 15. It was between 15 and 20. There's only one answer between 15 and 20. 23. These were the problems we did in class over and over and over again. Write a linear equation. The problem was he charges $75 for a tomato, and each month he gives away 5. X minus 5. Each month he gives away 5. And then he charges 75 cents per tomato. Now you could have had this, or you could have had the distributed answer. Either one was the same, but these were exactly like the problems we spent an entire day, actually 2 days in class going over. You had worksheets that we did them together in a group. Everyone was like, oh, we put it in parentheses. Okay. And then it says how many would be distributed if you are, how much did he earn if you distributed 80 tomatoes? So that means you were just supposed to put the 80 in here. And you always do what's in the parentheses first. So it would be 80 minus 5, and then multiply that answer by 0.75. Okay. Now, the linear function was the fact that you should have wrote f of x. Okay. And then you do the math. Remember, you're not solving for x in this case. You're putting in 80 tomatoes. You gave away 5 of them, so that means you only paid for 75. You get an answer. Ta-da. The next month, she sells cucumbers. Hopefully you know that was 0.6. And then this one was, they did x minus, how many? Correct. 3. Because she gave away 3 for the cucumbers. Now you could have had this answer with the f of x, because it said write a function. Okay. If it said write an equation, you put y, but it said write a function. And what could you have done? You could have distributed and wrote that answer down. I would have taken either one. If you distribute, you get 0.6x minus, I think it's 1.8. Okay. And then they said, that was it. That was all you needed to do. You didn't have to find out anything. You just had to be able to write the equation, the function. And we had done several of these in class. And then D. Harlan writes a function for the total amount of money. Why or why not can he do this? And hopefully you understood you can't do this. Why? Because cucumbers and tomatoes are not the same. So you can't give them the same variable. You can't use x twice because cucumbers and tomatoes are not the same. So you can use x for cucumbers, but you got to use a different variable for tomatoes. You can't use the same variable for both because they're not the same thing. And again, we talked about that in class. Went over that for quite some time. All right, 24. Darla spends $75 at the bookstore. She decides to buy books and magazines with the money. Books cost $16 each. Magazines are $8. So you could write an equation. They said let B stand for books. So it would be 16B plus 8M. Most people got this right, equals $75. That wasn't the part you had a ton of time with. It was then if she buys 2 books, you were supposed to put a 2 in for the books and then solve for M. So that means this would be 32 plus 8M equals 75 minus 32, which means 8M equals, correct, 43. Divide by 8, and you get M equals 5 point blah, 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 blah. And you're supposed to show your work and explain your reasoning. So if you showed the math work, you got half a point. If you explained your reasoning, you got the other half of your points. I didn't care if you told me how many pants she can buy or magazines. She can only buy 5 magazines. Why can she only buy 5 magazines? Because you can't buy pieces of magazines. Okay? And most people would explain to me, oh, you can't buy pieces of magazines, and give me the number 5, but showed me no work. If you don't show me the math work, I didn't give you the full points. If you didn't explain the reasoning, I didn't give you the full points. If you did neither, I didn't give you any points. Okay? So it was a half a point for being able to show your work. It was another half a point if you could explain your reasoning. You got a whole point if you could do both. And then you did the same thing for this one. It says, what's the greatest number if she buys no magazines? So now I'm putting a 0 in for M, which is like finding one of the intercepts. And I have 16B equals 75. Divide by 16, and I get B equals 4 point something. And the answer is you can only buy 4 books, because you can't buy pieces of another book. All right? You don't just round up, but those are the things you're looking for. All right, so those are the test corrections for Form A. Remember, Form B had the same questions, just in a different order. Make sure you write out the question, you show your work with the correct answer, and you tell me what you did wrong the first time. Because you have to submit to me, when you turn it in, you turn in the paper that you wrote all the questions out with, and you turn in the original answer sheet so that I can see what questions you got wrong and so on and so forth. Then you're able to retake this test. I'm not going to make you go back and do the skill practice for this test. Why? Because there was some things we didn't cover, some things we covered. I just want you to do the test corrections. I need to see them to make sure that you understand what you're doing, and then you may retake the test. All right. Thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you later.